The doorbell rang at 11:30 on a Thursday night, which meant either someone was having an emergency or I was about to have one. I paused the television and listened. Rain drummed against the windows of my apartment, the kind of steady downpour that makes smart people stay inside. The bell rang again, more insistent this time. I opened the door to find a woman I'd never seen before, though something about her seemed familiar. She was maybe 35, with dark hair plastered to her skull from the rain, and mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. She clutched a manila envelope against her chest like it contained state secrets. "Are you Reid Torrin?" she asked. "Depends who's asking." "My name is Nola. Your wife hired my boyfriend." She held up the envelope. "I have the emails." Now that was interesting. I stepped aside and gestured her in. "Coffee? You look like you could use something warm." She shook her head, but followed me to the kitchen anyway. Water dripped from her coat onto my linoleum floor, creating a small puddle that somehow seemed appropriate. Everything about this situation felt like it was going to leave a mess. "Your wife is Mara Torrin, right? Works in HR at Consolidated Industries?" "That's right." I leaned against the counter and studied her. "And your boyfriend would be?" "Drew Halden." The name hit me like a slap. Drew Halden was Mara's college ex, the one she claimed had just coincidentally ended up working at her company 6 months ago. The same Drew who had been taking her to lunch every single day since he started. The same Drew who made Mara laugh in ways I hadn't heard in years. "Pure coincidence," I said, echoing what Mara had told me when I'd asked about it. Nola's laugh was bitter. "That's what I thought too, until I found these." She set the envelope on my kitchen table and opened it with the care of someone defusing a bomb. "Drew got sloppy, left his laptop open last Tuesday. I wasn't looking for your wife. I was looking for the offshore account he promised me." She pulled out a stack of printed emails and spread them across the table like she was dealing cards. Each one had Mara's corporate signature at the bottom, that cheerful little tagline about teamwork and excellence that she'd spent 20 minutes crafting when she first got promoted. 11 messages over 3 months, Nola continued. "Your wife didn't just recommend Drew for that job. She campaigned for him, called in favors with the VP, made sure his application went to the top of the pile." I picked up the first email, dated 4 months ago. Mara had written to the hiring manager, gushing about Drew's qualifications and suggesting they fast-track his interview process. The enthusiasm practically jumped off the page. "She told me it was coincidence," I said again, more to myself than to Nola. "Coincidences don't require this much effort." Nola tapped another email. "This one's my favorite. She actually wrote that Drew would be an invaluable asset to the team and that she'd personally vouch for his character." The coffee maker gurgled in the background, filling the silence. I read through more emails, each one building a case that made my stomach tighten. Mara hadn't just helped Drew get the job. She'd orchestrated the entire thing. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Nola sat down heavily in one of my kitchen chairs. "Because I'm tired of being lied to, and because what I found goes way beyond your wife getting my boyfriend a job." She reached into the envelope again and pulled out bank statements. Foreign bank statements. "Drew and Mara opened an account together. Cayman Islands. They've been funding it with invoices from her department. Fake consultants, real money. $280,000 over 18 months. I stared at the numbers, trying to make them make sense. Mara made decent money in HR, but not this kind of money. Not the kind that required offshore accounts and fake invoices. "How do you know these are real?" "Because I work at First National. I process international transfers." Nola's voice was flat, professional. "I know what these documents mean. Your wife and my boyfriend are stealing from their company, and they're planning to disappear with the money." She pulled out one more piece of paper. Airline tickets. 2 seats to Panama City, departure in 11 days. One ticket had Drew's name on it, the other had Mara's. The coffee maker beeped, signaling it was done, but neither of us moved. I kept staring at that second ticket, at my wife's name printed in neat black letters next to a departure date that was less than 2 weeks away. "She's leaving," I said. "They both are. Drew's been telling me for months that we were going to travel together, see the world, start fresh somewhere new. Turns out he meant with your wife." I set the papers down and looked at Nola properly for the first time. She wasn't crying anymore, but her eyes held the same hollow look I'd been seeing in my own mirror lately, the look of someone who'd been played for a fool. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want them to pay for what they've done. To both of us." She stood up and gathered the papers back into the envelope. "Drew thinks he's so clever, thinks he's got everyone fooled. Your wife thinks she's untouchable because she's got connections and knows how to work the system. And you think we can stop them? I think we can ruin them, Nola's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I know things about Drew that he doesn't know I know, and you know things about Mara that she doesn't think you've figured out. She was right about that. I'd been noticing things for months. The way Mara's phone was always face down on the table, the way she'd started working late more often, coming home with stories about deadline pressure and difficult clients, the way she'd bought new clothes and started wearing perfume I'd never smelled before. What did you have in mind? I asked. First, we gather more evidence. Then we make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they really are. Nola headed for the door, then paused. Drew thinks he's the only one who knows how to play games. He's about to learn otherwise. After she left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the wet spot on the floor where she'd been standing. The apartment felt different now, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. I thought about Mara, probably asleep in our old house across town, the house I'd moved out of 3 months ago when we'd separated. She'd kept the house, said she needed the space to figure things out. Now I knew what she'd really been figuring out was how to steal $250,000 and disappear with her college boyfriend. The rain kept falling outside, and I kept thinking about those airline tickets. 11 days. That's how long I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those bank statements and airline tickets. By 6 in the morning, I was sitting at my computer with a cup of coffee, doing what I do best, digging through data. My job as an IT manager at a mid-sized consulting firm had taught me that people leave digital fingerprints everywhere. They just don't think anyone's looking for them. In Mara's case, I had a head start. We'd shared credit cards and bank accounts for 15 years before the separation. Some of those accounts were still linked to my phone for notifications. The first thing I found was a pattern of cash withdrawals. Small amounts, never more than $200 at a time, but consistent. Every Friday for the past 4 months, Mara had been pulling cash from our joint savings account, the account we'd agreed not to touch during the separation. Then I found the restaurant charges. Marchetti's Italian, the same place, almost every weekday at 12:15. The charges were always for 2 meals, always paid with Mara's corporate card. Business lunches, she'd probably claimed them as. I called my friend Tony, who worked in Marchetti's kitchen. Reid, man, it's been forever. How are you holding up with the separation and all? I'm managing. Listen, I need a favor. You know that corner booth by the window? Has my wife been eating there regularly? There was a pause. Oh, hell, Reid. I was hoping you didn't know about that. About what, exactly? She's been coming in with some guy. Same time every day, same table. They're not talking about work, if you know what I mean. Can you describe him? Tall, dark hair, wears expensive suits, drives a silver BMW. They sit real close, you know? Hands touching, heads together. I felt bad for you every time I saw them. Drew Halden drove a silver BMW. I'd seen it in the company parking lot when I'd picked Mara up for our failed attempt at marriage counseling last month. Tony, I need another favor. Do you have security cameras that cover that booth? We do, but I can't just hand over footage to anyone who asks. What if I told you they might be involved in embezzling money from their company? Another pause, longer this time. That changes things. I get off at 4. Meet me in the parking lot. The rest of the morning crawled by. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering to what I'd learned. Mara and Drew had been planning this for months, maybe longer. The job, the lunches, the offshore account, the escape plan. It was elaborate and calculated and completely unlike the woman I'd married. At 4:30, I was sitting in Tony's beat-up Honda, watching him scroll through security footage on a tablet. Here, he said, stopping on a timestamp from 3 days ago. This is pretty typical. The video showed Mara and Drew at their usual table. Even in the grainy black and white footage, their body language was unmistakable. This wasn't a business lunch. Drew had his hand on top of Mara's, and she was leaning so close to him that their foreheads were almost touching. How long has this been going on? I asked. Since about a week after he started showing up. At first, I thought maybe they were just old friends catching up. But then... Tony fast-forwarded to another clip. In this one, Drew was kissing Mara's hand while she laughed. Friends don't do that. Can you copy these files for me? Already done. Tony handed me a flash drive. There's about 3 months' worth on there. Reid, I'm sorry, man. I should have said something sooner. You did the right thing. That evening, I called Gordon Price, my contact in corporate security at Consolidated Industries. Gordon and I had worked together at a previous company, and he owed me a favor from when I'd helped recover some stolen laptops a few years back. Reid, good to hear from you. How's married life treating you? Actually, that's why I'm calling. I need some information about an employee at your company, Drew Halden. Halden? Yeah, I remember that name. HR hire from about 6 months ago. What do you need to know? Everything you can tell me without breaking any rules. Gordon was quiet for a moment. This is about Mara, isn't it? What makes you say that? Because she's the one who pushed his application through, and because I've seen them together in the parking garage after hours. My grip tightened on the phone. What else do you know? Officially? Nothing. Unofficially? Halden's background check raised some red flags, credit issues, a couple of jobs that ended under questionable circumstances. Mara vouched for him personally, put her signature on a waiver that bypassed the standard verification process. Is that normal? For someone with Mara's seniority? It's allowed, but not common. She basically staked her reputation on this guy. Gordon, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think they're having an affair? Reid? Gordon sighed. I think your wife is in over her head with something. I've been in security for 20 years, and I know what people look like when they're hiding something. Mara's been nervous, jumpy, checking over her shoulder. That's not the behavior of someone who's just having lunch with a colleague. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment and tried to process everything I'd learned. The evidence was piling up, but it was all circumstantial. I needed something concrete, something that would prove what Mara and Drew were really doing. That's when I remembered Nola mentioning Drew's laptop. If he'd been sloppy enough to leave it open once, he might do it again. And if he was using company resources to manage their offshore account, there would be a digital trail. I called Nola. I was wondering when I'd hear from you, she said. I've been doing some research. We need to talk. My place or yours? Neutral ground. You know the Denny's on 5th Street? I'll be there in 30 minutes. Nola looked better than she had the night before. Her hair was dry, her makeup was fixed, and she'd traded her rain-soaked coat for a leather jacket that made her look like someone you wouldn't want to cross. I showed her the security footage on my laptop. She watched without saying anything, but I could see her jaw tightening with each clip. 96 consecutive days, I said. Tony checked the records. They haven't missed a single weekday since Drew started working there. Bastards. Nola's voice was flat. While Drew was taking your wife to lunch every day, he was telling me he was too busy with his new job to see me more than once a week. There's more. I told her about the background check, about Mara's waiver, about Gordon's observations. Nola listened to everything, then pulled out her own phone. I've been busy too. I did some digging into Drew's employment history. She showed me a series of news articles she'd bookmarked. Drew's father, Robert Halden, worked at Consolidated Industries 12 years ago. He was fired for embezzling money through fake consultant invoices. The pieces clicked into place. The same scheme they're running now. Exactly. And guess who Robert Halden's supervisor was when he got fired? I had a sinking feeling I already knew the answer. Mara's father, James Morrison. He's the one who discovered the embezzlement and had Robert fired, but Robert disappeared before they could prosecute him. Took about $300,000 with him and was never seen again. So this is revenge. Or inheritance. Maybe Drew learned the scheme from his father. Maybe he specifically targeted your wife because of the connection. Nola leaned back in her booth. Either way, they're not just stealing money. They're repeating history. What do we do with this information? We use it. Nola's smile was predatory. Drew thinks he's so smart, thinks he's got the perfect plan. He has no idea that I know about his father, or that I've been documenting every suspicious thing he's done for the past 2 months. What kind of documentation? Photos of him at the bank making large cash deposits, screenshots of his computer when he thought I wasn't looking, recordings of phone calls where he talks about the project and the timeline. You recorded him without his knowledge? I'm a woman dating a man who keeps secrets and has access to large amounts of money. Of course I recorded him. Nola's expression was matter of fact. I learned a long time ago that trust is a luxury I can't afford. So what's our next move? We make them sweat. They think they have 11 days to execute their plan and disappear. We're going to make sure those 11 days feel like 11 years. Nola reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, businesslike. They played us, Reid, both of us. Now it's our turn to play them. The next morning, I started with something simple. I sent Mara a text message. Saw the most interesting article about corporate embezzlement schemes. Amazing how creative people can get with consultant invoices. She responded within minutes. What are you talking about? Nothing specific, just fascinating how these things work. Have a great day at work. I didn't hear back from her after that, but Gordon called me around noon. Reid, did you say something to Mara about embezzlement? Why do you ask? Because she showed up in my office this morning asking about security protocols for financial investigations. She seemed nervous. What did you tell her? Standard procedure. If we suspect financial irregularities, we freeze the employee's access while we investigate. She asked a lot of specific questions about timelines and evidence requirements. Interesting. Reid, what are you up to? Nothing illegal. I'm just making sure my wife knows that people are paying attention. That afternoon, Nola called with an update. Drew's been making phone calls all day. I can hear him through the apartment walls. He keeps saying things like, "We need to move faster," and "Something's wrong." Good. Let him worry. I did something else. I hope you don't mind. What? I sent an anonymous email to Consolidated's ethics hotline. Just basic information about suspicious financial activity in the HR department. No names, no specific accusations. Just enough to get them looking. I felt a chill run through me. Nola, that's what they deserve. Reid, these people are thieves. They're planning to steal nearly $300,000 and disappear. They've been lying to both of us for months. Why are you protecting them? She was right, but it still felt like crossing a line. Once you involve corporate security and ethics departments, things escalate quickly. What exactly did you tell them? That an HR employee might be approving fake consultant invoices and funneling money to offshore accounts. I gave them the account number and suggested they check recent hiring decisions for conflicts of interest. They'll investigate. They'll have to. It's their job. That evening, I decided to take a more direct approach. I drove to Marchetti's and waited in the parking lot. At 12:10, Mara's car pulled in, followed by Drew's silver BMW. I watched them walk into the restaurant together. Drew had his hand on the small of Mara's back, a gesture that was casual and possessive at the same time. They looked comfortable together, like a couple who'd been dating for months rather than colleagues grabbing a quick lunch. I waited until they were seated at their usual table, then walked into the restaurant. The hostess started to seat me, but I told her I was just looking for someone. I walked directly to Mara's table. "Hi, honey," I said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd surprise you. Mara's face went white. Drew looked confused, then annoyed. "Reid, what are you doing here?" "Having lunch with my wife." "You don't mind, do you, Drew?" I pulled out a chair and sat down before either of them could object. The table was small, intimate. There was barely room for 2 people, let alone 3. "This is awkward," Drew said. "Is it? I don't think it's awkward at all. Just 3 friends having lunch." I picked up the menu and pretended to study it. "Mara's told me so much about you, Drew, how you two just happened to end up working together after all these years. What are the odds?" "Pretty slim," Drew said carefully. "That's what I thought, almost like it was planned." I looked directly at Mara. "But that would be crazy, right? Why would someone go through all the trouble of getting their ex-boyfriend hired at their company?" Mara found her voice. "Reid, you're being inappropriate." "Am I? I'm just curious about coincidences. Like how you've been having lunch here every single day since Drew started working at your company. Same time, same table. That's quite a coincidence, too." Drew started to stand up. "I think I should go." "Oh, don't leave on my account. I'm enjoying this conversation." I leaned back in my chair. "Mara, you should invite Drew over for dinner sometime. I'd love to hear more about his consulting work." "We're separated, Reid. I don't need your permission to have lunch with colleagues." "Of course not. I'm just making conversation." I stood up and dropped a $20 bill on the table. "Lunch is on me. You two enjoy the rest of your meal." I walked out of the restaurant feeling like I just fired the first shot in a war. My phone buzzed before I reached my car. "What the hell was that?" Mara's text read. "Just being friendly," I replied. She called me immediately. "Reid, you can't just show up at my lunch meetings and embarrass me in front of colleagues." "Colleague? Is that what we're calling Drew now?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. I just think it's interesting how close you two have become. Very professional." There was a long pause. "Are you having me followed?" "Why would I do that? I trust you completely." The lie came easily. "Although, speaking of trust, I've been thinking about our joint accounts. Maybe we should close them, make the separation more official." "You can't do that without my signature." "Actually, I can. I talked to our lawyer yesterday. Since we're not officially divorced yet, either party can freeze joint accounts if they suspect irregular activity." "Irregular activity? Reid, what are you talking about?" "Probably nothing, just those cash withdrawals you've been making. Small amounts, but consistent. I'm sure you have a good explanation." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. We need to talk, she finally said. I agree. How about dinner tonight? Just the two of us. Fine. 7 o'clock. The house. After I hung up, I called Nola. How did it go? She asked. I rattled them. Mara wants to have dinner tonight, probably to figure out how much I know. Be careful. If they're planning to leave in 10 days, they might accelerate their timeline. What about Drew? How's he handling the pressure? Not well. He's been pacing around his apartment all afternoon, and he made 3 calls to someone he kept calling M. That's probably your wife. Probably. Reid, there's something else. I followed Drew to the bank this afternoon. He made a large withdrawal from a personal account. Cash. How much? I couldn't see the exact amount, but it was enough to require manager approval. He was there for almost an hour. They're getting ready to run. That's what I think too, which means we need to move faster. That evening, I drove to the house I'd shared with Mara for 12 years. It looked the same from the outside, but walking through the front door felt like entering a stranger's home. Mara had rearranged the furniture, changed the artwork on the walls, replaced the curtains in the living room. She was erasing me from the space, one piece at a time. You're early, she said, not looking up from the stove. Traffic was light. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Nola had shown me those emails 2 nights ago. Smells good. What are we having? Chicken parmesan, your favorite. It was a peace offering, or maybe a distraction. Mara only cooked elaborate meals when she wanted something or when she was feeling guilty about something. So, she said, setting plates on the table, we need to discuss boundaries. What kind of boundaries? You can't show up at my workplace and embarrass me. We're separated, Reid. That means we live separate lives. I understand, but we're not divorced yet. We still have shared financial obligations. Such as? Our joint savings account, the one you've been making regular withdrawals from. Mara set down her fork. I'm allowed to access my own money. Our money, and I'm curious what you need cash for. You pay for everything with credit cards. Personal expenses. What kind of personal expenses require $200 in cash every week? That's none of your business. Actually, it is. Until we're officially divorced, it's very much my business. I took a bite of chicken. This is delicious, by the way. You always were a better cook than me. Reid, what do you want? I want honesty. I want to know why my wife has been lying to me for months. I haven't been lying to you. Drew Halden didn't just coincidentally end up working at your company. You got him that job? Mara's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. Who told you that? Does it matter? The point is, you lied to me. You told me it was pure coincidence, but you actively campaigned to get him hired. So what if I did? He's qualified for the position. Is he? Because according to my sources, he failed his background check. You had to override the system to get him approved. Now Mara looked genuinely frightened. Reid, what are you doing? Are you investigating me? I'm protecting myself, and I'm starting to think I need protection from my own wife. That's ridiculous. Is it? You've been having lunch with your ex-boyfriend every day for months. You've been making mysterious cash withdrawals. You've been working late and coming home with stories that don't add up. I leaned forward. What am I supposed to think? Mara stood up and started clearing the table, even though we were both still eating. I think you should leave. This is still my house too, Mara, at least until the divorce is final. Fine, then I'll leave. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I followed her. Running away won't solve anything, I called after her. She turned back, and for a moment, I saw something in her eyes that might have been panic. There's nothing to solve, Reid. You're being paranoid and controlling, and I'm not going to put up with it. Where are you going? That's none of your business. She got in her car and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway of our house, wondering what I'd just accomplished. My phone buzzed with a text from Nola. Drew just left his apartment with 2 suitcases. I'm following him. The game was accelerating faster than I'd expected. Nola's next text came 20 minutes later. He's at the Marriott downtown, room 1247. Mara just arrived. I sat in my car outside the hotel for 2 hours, watching the windows of the 12th floor and trying to decide what to do next. Confronting them directly would probably just push them to run sooner, but doing nothing felt like giving up. At 10:30, my phone rang. Gordon. Reid, we need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere private? What's going on? Not over the phone. You know the coffee shop on Elm Street. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Gordon looked tired when I found him at a corner table. He'd ordered coffee for both of us, but his cup was already empty. We got an anonymous tip yesterday about financial irregularities in HR, he said without preamble. I've been going through the records all day. And? Your wife is in serious trouble. So is Drew Halden. Gordon pulled out a folder and opened it carefully. Fake consultant invoices going back 18 months. Always approved by Mara, always for companies that don't exist or don't have contracts with us. How much money are we talking about? $273,000, maybe more. I'm still tracking down all the payments. What happens now? Officially? I have to report this to the police and the FBI. Financial fraud at this level is a federal crime. Gordon looked at me seriously. Unofficially? I wanted to give you a heads up before everything hits the fan. When? Tomorrow morning. I've already prepared the report. Mara's access will be terminated, and there'll be federal agents at her desk by 9 a.m. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. What about Drew? Same thing. They're both finished. Gordon closed the folder. Reid, I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy. Actually, it's easier than I expected. There's something else you should know. The anonymous tip included specific details that only someone with inside knowledge could have provided. Account numbers, transaction dates, even the names of the fake consulting companies. What are you saying? Someone close to this situation wanted them caught. Someone who had access to information that wasn't publicly available. I thought about Nola, about her job at the bank and her access to international transfer records. She'd been more thorough than I'd realized. Any idea who sent the tip? No, but whoever it was, they did their homework. Gordon stood up. Reid, you might want to prepare yourself for some difficult conversations. When people get arrested for financial crimes, they tend to blame everyone except themselves. After Gordon left, I called Nola. Where are you now? I asked. Still watching the hotel. They're in there together. Room service brought up champagne an hour ago. They're celebrating. Probably. They have no idea what's coming tomorrow. Gordon says federal agents will be at their desks by 9 a.m. It's over. There was a long pause. Good. They deserve everything that's about to happen to them. Nola, did you give Gordon more information than you told me about? What do you mean? The anonymous tip included details that only someone with banking knowledge would know. Account numbers, transaction specifics. I may have been more thorough than I initially mentioned. How thorough? I've been documenting everything for 2 months, Reid. Every suspicious transaction, every unusual pattern, every lie Drew told me about where the money was coming from. Her voice was steady, matter of fact. I work in international banking. I know what financial crimes look like. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure you'd go through with it if you knew how serious the consequences would be. These aren't just workplace violations. Your wife and my boyfriend are going to federal prison. The weight of that hit me. Prison. Not just embarrassment or job loss, but actual incarceration. I'd been so focused on revenge that I hadn't fully considered the endgame. Are you having second thoughts? Nola asked. I don't know. Maybe. They stole nearly $300,000, Reid. They were planning to disappear to Panama in 9 days. They would have gotten away with it if we hadn't stopped them. I know. Your wife looked you in the eye and lied to you for months. She told you Drew's hiring was pure coincidence while she was actively embezzling money to fund their escape plan. I know. Then don't feel guilty about this. Feel proud. We caught them. But I didn't feel proud. I felt hollow, like I'd won a game I wasn't sure I'd wanted to play. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to Consolidated Industries. I didn't have any business there, but I wanted to see what happened when Mara's world collapsed. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:45, 2 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. Federal agents, just like Gordon had promised. At 9:15, I saw Mara being escorted out of the building in handcuffs. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. Drew was right behind her, also cuffed, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face pale. Neither of them saw me watching from across the street. My phone rang. It was my lawyer. Reid, I just got a call from the FBI. They want to interview you about Mara's financial activities. What should I tell them? The truth? You're not suspected of any wrongdoing, but they need to establish what you knew and when you knew it. And if I didn't know anything? Then you tell them that. Reid, are you okay? You sound strange. I'm fine. Just processing everything. This is going to be all over the news. Consolidated Industries is a big company, and this is a significant amount of money. You should prepare yourself for media attention. After I hung up, I sat in my car and watched the FBI agents carry boxes of evidence out of the building. Mara's entire professional life, reduced to cardboard boxes and evidence tags. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is all your fault. I hope you're happy. It had to be from Mara. They'd probably given her one phone call, and she'd used it to blame me for her own crimes. I typed back, "You made your choices. I just made sure there were consequences." She didn't respond. That afternoon, Nola called. "Have you seen the news?" "No. It's everywhere. HR manager and consultant arrested in embezzlement scheme. They're calling it one of the largest corporate fraud cases in the state this year. How do you feel about it?" "Satisfied. Justice served. How do you feel?" I thought about that. How did I feel? Relieved, certainly. Vindicated, maybe, but also strangely empty. "Like it's over," I said finally. "It is over. They're both going to prison, probably for several years. The money's been recovered. Their reputations are destroyed." Nola's voice was cheerful, almost celebratory. "We won." "Yeah, we won." But winning felt different than I'd expected. I'd imagined feeling triumphant, vindicated, satisfied with justice served. Instead, I just felt tired. That evening, I went back to the house to collect some belongings I'd left behind. The FBI had been there too, I could tell. Drawers were slightly open, papers were out of place, and Mara's home office had been stripped of her computer and filing cabinets. I found a note on the kitchen table, written in Mara's handwriting. "Reid, I know you're behind this. I know you and that woman planned this together. You've destroyed my life over a mistake. I hope it was worth it. M. A mistake." After 18 months of systematic embezzlement, after months of lying to my face, after planning to disappear to Panama with stolen money, she was calling it a mistake. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. My phone rang. It was my daughter, Sammy, calling from college. "Dad, I just saw the news about Mom. What's happening?" "It's complicated, sweetheart. The news said she stole money from her company. That can't be true." "I'm afraid it is true." "But why? We never needed money. You and Mom both had good jobs." I didn't know how to explain it to her. How do you tell your 16-year-old daughter that her mother threw away everything for a college boyfriend and $250,000? "Sometimes people make choices that don't make sense to the rest of us," I said. "Are you okay, Dad?" "I'm okay. Are you?" "I don't know. This is all so crazy. Yesterday I had normal parents who were just getting divorced. Today my mom's on the news for being a criminal. Your mom made some very bad choices, but that doesn't change the fact that she loves you. Does it? Because people who love their families don't usually steal money and plan to run away to other countries." She had a point. I didn't have a good answer for that. "Dad, did you know about what she was doing?" "Not until recently." "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet. Take things one day at a time, I guess." After I hung up, I sat in the empty house and tried to figure out what came next. The marriage was definitely over. The divorce would be straightforward now, with Mara facing criminal charges. I'd probably get the house, the remaining assets, everything. I'd gotten my revenge. Mara and Drew were facing federal charges. Their careers were over, and their reputations were destroyed. It was everything I'd wanted when this started. So why did I feel so empty? 3 days after the arrests, I was sitting in my apartment when someone knocked on my door. Not the doorbell this time, just a firm, insistent knocking that suggested whoever it was wouldn't be going away. I opened the door to find a man I'd never seen before, but who looked familiar in an unsettling way. He was maybe 60, with graying hair and expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the fact that he was furious. "Are you Reid Torrin?" "Depends who's asking." "Robert Halden, Drew's father." That explained the familiar look. He had Drew's build and Drew's sharp features, but with 25 years of wear and what looked like a lot of hard living. "What can I do for you, Mr. Halden?" "You can explain why you destroyed my son's life over a woman who was using him." I stepped aside and gestured him in, more out of curiosity than hospitality. "Using him how?" "Drew didn't come up with that embezzlement scheme on his own. That was all your wife's idea." Robert sat down heavily on my couch. "She researched my history with that company, found out about the money I took 12 years ago, and decided to recreate the whole thing. Your son was a willing participant." "My son was a fool who thought he was in love. Your wife was the mastermind." I poured myself a cup of coffee and didn't offer him any. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change anything. They both made choices. Do you know why I took that money 12 years ago? I assume because you wanted it. Because your wife's father was going to fire me anyway. James Morrison had it in for me from day one. He made my life miserable, undermined my work, sabotaged my projects. When I realized he was building a case to get me terminated, I figured I might as well make it worth my while." "So you stole $300,000. I took what I was owed. Severance pay, you might call it. Robert's smile was bitter. And I got away with it too. Disappeared to Mexico, started over, built a new life. Then why are you here? Because your wife convinced my son that he could do the same thing. She told him the whole story, made it sound romantic and exciting, a way to get back at the system that had screwed over his family. And Drew bought that? Drew's been angry about what happened to me his whole life. He was 8 years old when I disappeared. He grew up thinking his father was a criminal who abandoned him. Weren't you? I was a man who got backed into a corner and made a desperate choice. But your wife made it sound like I was some kind of folk hero, sticking it to the corporate establishment. I set down my coffee cup. What exactly are you asking me to do about this? Help me get Drew out of this mess. He's facing 20 years in federal prison for something that was mostly your wife's idea. I'm not a lawyer, Mr. Halden, and even if I were, your son committed federal crimes. There's evidence, documentation, bank records. There's also a pattern. Your wife targeted my son specifically because of our history with that company. She manipulated him into recreating my crime. That doesn't make him innocent. It makes him a victim. I studied Robert Halden's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. What I saw instead was a father desperately trying to save his son from the consequences of choices that probably started long before Drew met Mara. Even if everything you're saying is true, I can't undo what's already been done. The FBI has their evidence. The case is out of my hands. But you could testify about your wife's character, about her history of manipulation. I could, but I won't. Why not? Because your son is 37 years old. He made his own choices. Maybe Mara influenced those choices, but she didn't force him to embezzle money or plan to flee the country. Robert stood up, his face flushed with anger. You self-righteous bastard! You destroyed 2 lives because your wife hurt your feelings. I exposed 2 criminals because they were stealing money and planning to disappear with it. You collaborated with Drew's girlfriend to entrap them. We documented crimes that were already being committed. You're splitting hairs. I'm stating facts. Robert headed for the door, then turned back. This isn't over. Drew has a good lawyer, and we're going to fight these charges. When this goes to trial, everyone's going to know that you orchestrated this whole thing out of spite. Good luck with that. After he left, I called Nola. Drew's father just paid me a visit, I said. What did he want? To convince me that Drew was manipulated by Mara, that the whole thing was her idea. Do you believe him? I think it's probably partially true. Mara's always been good at getting people to do what she wants. But that doesn't change anything, right? Drew still committed the crimes. Right? Reid, you sound troubled by this. I am, a little. What if we destroyed someone who was more victim than criminal? Then he should have made better choices. Reid, we've been over this. These people stole nearly $300,000. They were planning to disappear and leave everyone else to clean up the mess. I know. Don't let some sob story from a criminal's father make you feel guilty about doing the right thing. But I was feeling guilty, and I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was seeing Robert Halden's desperation, or maybe it was the growing realization that revenge wasn't as satisfying as I'd expected it to be. That weekend, I drove to the county jail to visit Mara. I wasn't sure why I was going, but I felt like I needed to see her, to understand what had really happened. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her face was pale, and she'd lost weight in just a few days. The orange jumpsuit made her look like a stranger. I'm surprised you came, she said when she sat down across from me in the visiting room. So am I. Have you come to gloat? Have you come to apologize? We stared at each other across the metal table, 2 people who'd shared 15 years of marriage and apparently never really known each other at all. I'm sorry, she said finally. Not for what I did to the company, but for what I did to you. You didn't deserve to be lied to. Why, Mara? We had a good life. We had enough money, a nice house, a daughter who loves us both. Why throw it all away? Because I felt trapped. Because I'd been doing the same job, living the same life, following the same routine for so long that I felt like I was disappearing. So you decided to actually disappear? Drew made it sound exciting, like an adventure, like we could start over somewhere new and be different people. With stolen money. I told myself we were just borrowing it, that we'd pay it back eventually. $273,000, Mara. How were you planning to pay that back? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to set up offshore accounts and book flights to Panama. Mara's shoulders sagged. You're right. I was thinking clearly. I just wasn't thinking about the consequences. What about Drew? Was he the mastermind, or were you? It was both of us. He knew about his father's scheme, and I knew how the company's financial systems worked. We combined our knowledge. His father says you manipulated Drew into it. His father is trying to save his son from prison. Of course he's going to blame me. Did you manipulate him? Mara was quiet for a long time. I encouraged him. I made it sound easier than it was, safer than it was. I told him we deserved better than what we had. And he believed you. He wanted to believe me, just like I wanted to believe him when he said we could get away with it. What happens now? My lawyer says I'm looking at 15 to 20 years. Drew might get less if he cooperates, but probably not much less. I'm sorry. Are you? Because you're the one who exposed us. You and that woman. Nola. Yes, Nola. Drew's girlfriend, who turned out to be smarter than both of us. We didn't make you commit crimes, Mara. We just made sure there were consequences for the crimes you'd already committed. I know. She looked down at her hands. Reid, what are you going to tell Sammy? The truth, that her mother made some very bad choices and has to face the consequences? She's going to hate me. Maybe, for a while, but she's smart and she's strong. She'll figure out how to deal with this. Will you help her? Will you make sure she knows that I love her, even though I screwed everything up? Of course. Thank you. I left the jail feeling worse than when I'd arrived. Seeing Mara broken and defeated hadn't brought me the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, it just made me feel empty and tired. That evening, Nola called. How was the jail visit? Depressing. Good. Maybe now she understands what she put everyone through. Nola, I think I'm done with this. Done with what? The revenge, the anger, the whole thing. It's over. They're caught, they're going to prison, and I just want to move on with my life. That's probably healthy. What about you? Are you ready to move on? I think so. I'm actually thinking about moving to a different city, starting fresh somewhere new. That sounds like a good idea. Reid, I want you to know that I don't regret what we did. They deserved everything that happened to them. Maybe, but I'm not sure we deserved to be the ones to make it happen. Someone had to. Did they? Maybe they would have gotten caught eventually anyway. Or maybe they would have gotten away with it and ruined other people's lives. We'll never know. No, we won't. But we know they didn't get away with it. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment and tried to figure out what came next. The marriage was over, the revenge was complete, and the criminals were caught. I'd won by any reasonable measure. So why did winning feel so much like losing? 2 weeks after the arrests, I was back to my normal routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat. The media attention had died down, the FBI had finished their interviews, and life was slowly returning to something resembling normal. Then Gordon called. Reid, we need to meet. There's been a development. What kind of development? The kind that changes everything. Can you come to my office? An hour later, I was sitting across from Gordon in his corporate security office, looking at a stack of documents that made my stomach sink. We found more money, Gordon said. A lot more? How much more? Try $800,000, spread across 6 different accounts, 3 different banks, 2 different countries. I stared at the numbers, trying to process what this meant. Mara and Drew were stealing $800,000? That's what it looks like. The original investigation only caught the most recent activity. When we dug deeper, we found a much more sophisticated operation. How long has this been going on? At least 3 years, maybe longer. Gordon pulled out another document. Reid, there's something else. The operation didn't start when Drew got hired. It started before that. What do you mean? Mara's been running fake consultant invoices since 2020. Drew's hiring was part of the plan, not the beginning of it. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Mara hadn't been seduced into crime by her college boyfriend. She'd been a criminal long before Drew came back into her life. She was already stealing when we were living together, I said. For at least 2 years of your marriage, yes. And I never noticed. Why would you? She was careful, professional, small amounts spread over time, different accounts, legitimate-looking paperwork. What about Drew? He definitely escalated things. The offshore accounts, the larger amounts, the escape plan, that all started after he was hired, but the basic scheme was already in place. I thought about all the times Mara had worked late, all the business trips she'd taken, all the new clothes and jewelry she'd bought. I'd attributed it to her success at work, her promotion, her increased responsibilities. I was living with a criminal for 2 years and didn't know it. She's good at what she does, or was anyway. What happens now? The federal charges get upgraded. Instead of facing 15 to 20 years, Mara's looking at 25 to 30. Drew's charges stay about the same, since his involvement was more limited. The words landed with a dull, physical weight, like something heavy being set down on the table between us. Gordon's voice was steady, almost clinical, but my stomach tightened anyway. I stared past him at the framed print on the wall, some forgettable landscape meant to be calming, and tried to absorb what those numbers actually meant in human terms. Decades. Whole sections of a life erased. Have you told them? Their lawyers were informed this morning. Mara's attorney is requesting a meeting with prosecutors to discuss a plea deal. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of my notebook without realizing it, feeling the paper catch against my skin. A plea deal. Even now, she was negotiating, calculating, looking for leverage. That part didn't surprise me as much as it probably should have. What kind of plea deal? Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'd have to provide details about the entire operation, identify any other people involved, help recover all the stolen money. I let out a slow breath through my nose. Cooperation meant confession, meant everything dragged out into the open. Every decision, every lie, every hidden account. The idea of it felt invasive, like strangers would be sifting through the wreckage of my life with latex gloves. Are there other people involved? We don't know yet. An operation this sophisticated usually requires inside help, someone in accounting, maybe someone in IT, possibly someone in management. The thought that there might be more conspirators, more lies, more betrayals was exhausting. How deep did this go? How many people had been lying to everyone around them? I felt a familiar pressure build behind my eyes, not quite anger, not quite grief, something flatter and heavier. It seemed endless, the way each answer only opened up another question, another layer of rot beneath what I'd thought was solid ground. Gordon, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Did I do the right thing? Exposing them, I mean? As soon as the words were out, I hated how small they sounded, how uncertain. Gordon leaned back in his chair and studied my face, really looked at me like he was gauging how much reassurance I could take without breaking. You mean, are you having second thoughts? I'm having a lot of thoughts, mostly about whether I destroyed people's lives out of spite or whether I actually prevented something worse from happening. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the HVAC. I could hear my own heartbeat, too fast, too loud, like it was trying to argue on my behalf. Reid, if you hadn't exposed them, they would have disappeared to Panama with nearly $1 million in stolen money. The company would have eventually discovered the theft, but Mara and Drew would have been long gone. I pictured it without meaning to, airports, sun, anonymity. A clean break. It felt obscene that part of me could still imagine her smiling somewhere far away. But now they're facing decades in prison. Because they committed crimes that deserve decades in prison. I know, it's just what? It's hard to feel good about ruining someone's life, even when they deserve it. My voice cracked slightly on the last word, and I hated that too. Gordon didn't rush to fill the silence. When he spoke again, his tone softened. You didn't ruin their lives, Reid. They did that themselves. You just made sure they didn't ruin anyone else's life in the process. I nodded, though I wasn't sure the knot in my chest believed him yet. That afternoon, I called my lawyer to discuss the divorce proceedings. I stood by the kitchen window while we talked, watching a delivery truck idle across the street. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. This is going to be straightforward now, he said. With Mara facing federal charges, she's not going to contest anything. You'll get the house, the remaining assets, probably custody of Sammy if that becomes relevant. What about the stolen money? Any recovered funds will go back to the company first, then to cover legal fees and restitution. There probably won't be anything left for division in the divorce. I don't want any of that money anyway. I surprised myself with how quickly I said it, how certain I was. That's probably wise. You don't want to be associated with the proceeds of criminal activity. What's the timeline? 6 months, maybe less. Mara's lawyer is focused on the criminal case now. The divorce is a secondary concern. I thanked him and ended the call, setting the phone down carefully, like it might shatter if I wasn't gentle enough. That evening, I called Sammy at college. She answered on the third ring, her voice thinner than usual, stretched tight. Dad, I saw the news about the additional charges. Is it true that Mom was stealing money for 3 years? It looks that way. So she was stealing money while you two were still together? While she was lying to both of us about everything? Yes. There was a pause on the line, long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. I don't understand how someone can do that. How can you lie to your family every day for years? I don't understand it either, sweetheart. Are you okay? This has to be really hard for you. I leaned my forehead against the cool wall, closing my eyes. I'm managing. How are you doing? I'm angry and embarrassed and confused. Sammy's voice was shaky. My friends keep asking me about it, and I don't know what to tell them. Tell them the truth, that your mother made some very bad choices, and now she has to face the consequences. Do you think she ever loved us? Really loved us? The question hit harder than all the rest. I took a moment, choosing words that wouldn't collapse under their own weight. I think she loved us as much as she was capable of loving anyone, but I also think she loved money and excitement more. That's not very comforting. I'm sorry. I wish I had better answers. Dad, I don't want to see her. I know she's in jail, but when this goes to trial, I don't want to be there. I don't want to support her. You don't have to. You can choose how much or how little contact you want to have with her. Good, because right now, I don't want any. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment and tried to process everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, I'd thought my biggest problem was a wife who was having lunch with her ex-boyfriend. Now I was divorcing a woman who'd been systematically stealing money for years and was facing 3 decades in federal prison. The phone rang. It was Nola. Oh, I heard about the additional charges, she said. News travels fast. Are you okay? I don't know. Finding out that Mara was a criminal long before Drew came along changes things. How so? It means I was married to someone I never really knew. For years I was living with a person who was lying to me every single day. That has to be devastating. It is, but it's also liberating in a strange way. What do you mean? I've been feeling guilty about destroying their lives, but now I realize they destroyed their own lives long before I got involved. I just exposed what was already there. Exactly. You did the right thing, Reid. Maybe, I'm still not sure there was a right thing to do in this situation. There was. You chose honesty over complicity. You chose justice over loyalty to someone who didn't deserve it. When you put it that way, it sounds almost noble. It was noble. You could have looked the other way, pretended you didn't know what was happening, let them disappear with the money. Instead, you made sure they faced consequences for their actions. What about you? Any regrets? None. Drew used me, lied to me, and planned to abandon me for your wife and a pile of stolen money. He got exactly what he deserved. Are you really moving away? Next month. I got a job offer in Denver. New city, new start, new life. That sounds good. What about you? What's next? I honestly don't know. Finish the divorce, I guess. Try to rebuild some kind of relationship with my daughter. Figure out what it means to be single again after 15 years of marriage. You'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think. Am I? You exposed a $1 million embezzlement scheme and brought down 2 federal criminals. I'd say that takes some strength. After Nola hung up, I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Mara was sitting in a jail cell, probably trying to figure out how her life had gone so wrong so quickly. Somewhere else, Drew was doing the same thing. I didn't feel sorry for them anymore. I didn't feel angry either. Mostly I just felt tired and ready to move on. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with the newspaper. There was a small article about Mara and Drew's case on page 6, just a few paragraphs about the upgraded charges and the ongoing investigation. Former HR manager faces additional charges in embezzlement case, the headline read. Former HR manager. That's what Mara was now. Not my wife, not Sammy's mother, not a respected professional. Just a former HR manager who'd been caught stealing money. I folded the newspaper and put it in the recycling bin. I didn't need to read about it anymore. I'd lived it, I'd survived it, and now it was time to move forward. The doorbell rang. For a moment, I wondered if it was another angry relative or another federal agent or another reporter looking for a comment. Instead, it was a delivery driver with a package. Inside was a card from Sammy. Dad, thank you for being honest with me about everything. I know this has been hard for you too. Love, S. I sat down at my kitchen table and read the card 3 more times. Then I picked up my phone and called my daughter. Thank you for the card, I said when she answered. You're welcome. I meant every word. I love you, Sammy. I love you too, Dad. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Yeah, I said, and for the first time in weeks, I actually believed it. We're going to be okay. The story was over. The criminals were caught, the money was being recovered, and the people who'd been lied to were finally learning the truth. It wasn't the ending I'd expected when this all started, but it was the ending we deserved. Justice served, truth revealed, and a chance to start over with a clean slate. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for.